Esto es Frecuencia EMA.
Estás escuchando la tercera temporada de Frecuencia EMA. Yo soy Emanuel Márquez del blog Endurance y conocí a Carlan Gay durante el recién terminado torneo FIBA Americup femenino, donde este muchacho narró 26 partidos en 7 días y de inmediato supe que tenía que invitarlo al podcast. Con Carlan discutimos su camino hasta llegar a ser el narrador para la aplicación DAZN y FIBA, su experiencia en el campeonato del mundo en China 2019, donde también estuvo narrando los partidos para el internet, cómo se sintió para un canadiense trabajando como editor para Global NBA y el campeonato de los Raptors en la pasada campaña, y cómo se administra la garganta para narrar tantos partidos corridos. También hablamos un poquito de cómo fue la experiencia de trabajar con la reportera puertorriqueña Natalia Meléndez, quien lo acompañó en el Americup. Igualmente discutimos parte de lo que es del estatus del baloncesto femenino, los cambios en el off-season de la NBA, sus comienzos en el podcasting, y de hecho Carlan es la voz ahora de uno de los podcasts de la NBA llamado NBA Sound System. Y al final lo pongo en el spot y damos nuestro early picks para los premios de MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player y Coach. Curiosamente, Carlan Gay es un gran fanático del boxeo y me dijo que su deseo era algún día conocer a Félix Tito Trinidad, así que vamos a ver si podemos ayudarlo con ese pedido. Recuerden visitar nuestro blog easyendurance.wordpress.com para más artículos originales, entrevistas y contenido. También visita nuestro fanpage en Facebook, donde aparecen todos nuestros artículos. Y si te gusta este episodio, por favor, déjanos una valoración de 5 estrellas. Donde quiera que escuches este podcast, ya sea en Stitcher, en iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn Radio o Anchor. También estamos en YouTube para así poder llegar a más personas. Sin nada más que decir, vamos a hablar con Carlan Gay en Frecuencia EMA. Alright, Carlan Gay, welcome to Puerto Rico. Is this the first time here?
Yeah, it's my first time here. I'm Canadian, but I live in Charlotte, North Carolina now. And I want to come back for a weekend because, it's a 3-hour flight for me. I was telling my girlfriend that I can definitely take her here for a weekend, be able to enjoy it a little bit. Not that I haven't seen Puerto Rico so far. I've been able to see a little bit of the city, but, when you're working in an event like, it's 4 games a day, 1 day off, you're here for 7 days. The trip seems very short, so I didn't get a chance to see as much as I want to. But I got a vibe for the city, and so far so good.
You work for NBA Canada, right?
Yes.
You also do the play-by-play for FIBA.
Yes.
You work with DAZN.
Yes.
You do a lot of stuff. What do you like the most?
Well, my role my parent company is DAZN. DAZN is at DAZN we have a team that takes care of NBA global editions in 8 different markets around the world. So Canada being one of them, Australia, Japan, Argentina, Mexico, Spain, India, and Germany. So in those 8 markets, we have different teams across the world. Our home base is in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I work with our team to kind of facilitate working with the English language sites. We have a team down in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. We have a couple people in Mexico that contribute to the site. We have an editor in India. We have some incredible people working with us in Spain as well, in Japan, and of course Australia. So it's fun because you get an opportunity to talk basketball from different perspectives all around the world. Me being Canadian, obviously growing up in a country where it's very hockey focused, basketball is an afterthought for most of the time up until this year, with obviously the Raptors winning it. That is going to start to change the culture. But to get perspective from Argentina, where football is the focus, and Mexico, where football is the focus, Spain, where basketball is on the rise. I think in Spain, out of most countries in the world, basketball has the highest potential of growing. They have a lot of NBA players. They just won the World Cup. Mm-hmm. The growth of the game there and the interest in the game there is growing, exponentially. They have the second best league in the world, in most opinion, the ACB. A lot of talented players play there that can easily play in the NBA. So Spain has the biggest growth potential. Australia, I lived there for 4 years, so I got an opportunity to see the culture basketball-wise there, and it's very similar to Canada, where it's not the number one sport. It's never going to be the number one sport, but there's so much room for growth, and they have so much talent that the world is now starting to see that turning into NBA prospects where, 13, 14 guys now play in the NBA from Australia or New Zealand. So, and then Japan just got their biggest star, drafted 9th overall, Rui Hachimura, going to the Washington Wizards, and he's already a huge star in Japan. He's going to be a huge star overall for the entire country, not just in sports. I think people that don't even watch sports are going to know who Rui Hachimura is.
It's going to be to the Yao Ming level?
He has potential to be honest with you, because he hasn't even played a game yet, and he already has a sponsor with Jordan Brand. Right. He already has a couple sponsors locally with Japan, and he played for the national team this summer before even playing an NBA game at the World Cup. And played well. He was up against tough competition in the group. They played Turkey, they played the Czech Republic, and Team USA. So, in the group stage. So I was actually able to see him play live. He reminds me a lot of Blake Griffin.
He's that strong?
He's stronger than people give him credit for, and I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. I think that he like I said, he reminds me a little bit of Blake Griffin. If he's able to develop into great Blake Griffin, then maybe he does reach that Yao Ming potential and explodes basketball in Japan.
That's great. Carlan, you mentioned you're Canadian, so I'm guessing someone working with the NBA last year through the championship, that must be, something really special and something crazy. How was it for you?
Yeah, so for me personally, I don't really have a team that I root for. I'm not a fan of any team anymore. I'm more of a fan of players, but I always want to see the Raptors do well, because that means that the interest in Canada and basketball continues to grow with them. As the Raptors go, that's how kids that are 5, 6 years old will decide to play basketball over any other sport, and that's what's interesting to me. And being able to watch the Raptors win the championship, I was there for Game 5. I was there in Toronto for Game 6 when they won the championship. Wow. I was at Jurassic Park. I got to see, the team win Game 6 with a bunch of Raptor fans that, some knew, some just jumped on the bandwagon, as you would expect.
Right.
And then others that had been watching it for years with, their families, their parents that grew up watching. The Raptors have been in Canada now they're heading into their 25th season.
Wow.
And in the grand scheme of things, that's not a long time, but it's long enough for kids that were 5 years old to be 30 now, to have seen the Raptors grow up and grow up with them. And one thing that stuck out to me, I had a conversation at Jurassic Park with this guy who he was in his mid-30s, and his father had passed away. And one of the things that he remembered, or he thought about immediately when the Raptors won the championship, was those moments that he spent with his dad watching the Raptors when he was a kid. And that was a very touching moment for me to kind of share with him as he was watching the Raptors win the championship, because most people are happy, they're excited that the team won the championship, but everybody's thinking about it for different reasons. And for him specifically, he was thinking about, man, I wish my dad was here to see this. He would have loved it. So it was incredible to see the different reasons why people were interested in the championship team. And for me specifically, I was excited to see just the country of Canada embrace the Raptors and the sport of basketball. It wasn't just Toronto. People from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And Canada's a huge country. Mm-hmm. It is, it's as big as the country as you get in the world in terms of size and landmass. So to see people all the way in Vancouver who are probably closer to the Portland Trailblazers than they are to Toronto Raptors really root for the Raptors during the finals was incredible to see. It's and even out east, people that are closer to the Boston Celtics, for example, if you were driving by a car to go to Toronto and to embrace the team and set up Jurassic Parks across the country, big screens, everybody joined in parks. It was really cool to see Canada come together. And that's the one thing that Canada, I think, does really well is, doesn't matter the sport. If Canada's on the national stage or the global stage, this time being the NBA Finals, they kind of unite together. We see that at the Olympics all the time. For the Women's World Cup, the country kind of supports the team whenever it's going through. But I was really happy to see that it happened for basketball, and I hope it continues for a very long time.
But unfortunately, they lost Kawhi, they lost some of the key pieces. So do you think Canada, the Raptors are gonna keep their momentum?
I think the Raptors are going to be fine this year. Losing Kawhi obviously hurts. Now you turn into being a team that will defend your championship to a team that's now trying to rebuild and get back to that spot. Right. But that's not a bad thing. Canada's a situation where when you win a championship, when many teams aren't expecting you to, or many people aren't expecting you to win, right, and you do it out of nowhere, now you're back to being the underdog again, and that's rare as a champion. We saw the Golden State Warriors; they had to do it every year, no matter what. They had to go through the regular season, and if they could have won all 82 games in the regular season, but people wouldn't have cared if they didn't win the championship. The Raptors now have that luxury to take their time going through the regular season. They can go through losing streaks. They can learn. They can see how Pascal Siakam now becomes the number one option. They can find out what they have left in Kyle Lowry's tank, who, in my opinion, is the best Raptor of all time, bar none, after winning the championship.
I mean, you're being disrespectful to a guy named Vince Carter. I think he's not going to be too happy about this.
I love Vince Carter. Vince Carter is the most important Raptor in history. Kyle Lowry is the best Raptor in history. And what I mean by important Raptor in history, Vince Carter put the Raptors on the map. If it wasn't for Vince Carter, I don't think that we would see 17 Canadians playing in the NBA right now. If it wasn't for Vince Carter, I don't think we would see the entire country embrace the sport the way it embraced the sport. But when you put up the resumes side by side, and you look at what Kyle Lowry has done with the Raptors, when he came in to where he is now and how he performed in the finals and throughout the playoffs, he's always shown up. He's always been, if he's been hurt, he's played hurt. He's performed at a high level. If he had a bad playoff game, he bounced right back with a good one. It's unfortunate for them that they ran into LeBron James as many times as they ran into LeBron James.
Of course.
But now, this season was a tough one for him. His best friend gets traded.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. How tough do you think was for Kyle to overcome the DeRozan trade? I mean, being such good friends, and I mean, you're getting someone as Kawhi in return, so it's not like you're missing too much, but. Emotionally, how do you think he was able to finally get past the trade?
To be honest with you, I wasn't a fan of how he responded to the trade initially. I think he, came out publicly, and you can argue one way or the other how he decided to handle it. It was his business. I wasn't a fan of it because I think publicly it made it look like he was creating a rift between him and the rest of the team. Right. But I guess that's what he decided to do to really show support for his best friend. They're still best friends now. So I didn't like that initially. I was able to see them in training camp. We went out there to Vancouver. I saw them play their first game. And they looked like a team. So maybe perception-wise in the media and the outside looking in and everything that he did, all the interviews that he did with ESPN, talking about the organization and all the backstabbing that went on, that may have, to the outside looking in, looked like he was pulling away from the team, but I don't think he did that internally in the locker room. I think he was still the same guy that came to work, put his game face on, and knew what he had to do. And it showed at the end of the year. Him and Kawhi, looked like they were best friends.
Right.
He has that ability to really, pull the team together, and he's a great leader. I think he's turned the corner in that sense, because when he came to Toronto, I think he could have made an argument that he needed some maturity. He's grown in Toronto, and now he's become an incredible leader, and he's a champion.
Do you think his relationship with Masai Ujiri is now healthy, embracing a rebuild process as it's going to do now? I
don't think it will ever be what it once was before. Anytime you get any sort of heartbreak or friction in a relationship, you always you can forgive, but you never forget.
Right.
So and for Kyle Lowry, this is kind of his second sort of forgiveness with Masai Ujiri, because people forget Masai Ujiri was getting set to trade Kyle Lowry to the New York Knicks, and the Knicks decided not to trade for him. If the Knicks had decided to trade for him, he would have been playing in New York, and maybe never makes the finals with the Raptors, and maybe never really creates that relationship with DeMar DeRozan and creates that best friendship. Right. So that was a very public kind of trade rumor, and Lowry responded on the court by playing great basketball, and the Raptors ended up going on a run, and instead of blowing up the team, they ended up making their first playoff appearance, and then that's what started this growth and run that they're on right now. Mm-hmm. So that was the first sort of relationship hiccup that they had to go through. This is the second time he was able to bounce back. I think they'll be fine, going forward. It will never be as close as it once was, but hey, when you win a championship, all's forgotten. You can forgive, but I guess you really never forget.
Talking about great players, you recently voted for the top 30 players it's gonna be in the 2019 season,
yes.
And I gotta say, man, you make some bold statements there. Jumping out of my mind right now is LeBron James. You put him 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlan, come on, man. LeBron James.
I think LeBron James, and let me say this before I go into my explanation, the reason why I put him 5th. I think LeBron James is the best player in the world, ever in the world, to play the game of basketball. And that includes Michael Jordan. I have LeBron James over Michael Jordan. And the reason for that isn't just because of basketball and skill. I think off the court now, you have to take that into account. And I think LeBron James is just as good as a person. We haven't seen any hiccups or any reason to believe that he isn't. And I'm not saying that Michael Jordan is a bad person.
Right.
I'm just saying that, in my opinion, LeBron James is just doing more for his community publicly and really elevating the status of what it means now to be an athlete. And he's been able to do that because Michael Jordan gave him that platform and set that bar high. So Michael Jordan set the bar high. LeBron James has now picked that bar up and set it higher for someone else that's going to come and surpass him. And I'm ready to say, I'm not going to be stuck and go to my grave saying LeBron James is the greatest player ever. There could be someone else that's going to come and surpass LeBron James, which is I expect that. But now that other person comes about, they have to play really good basketball, and they also have to do really good things in the community and to try to be a humanitarian in the world. But basketball-wise, heading into this season, the last 3 years, LeBron James has decided to himself, I'm going to preserve myself in the regular season. I'm not going to play as hard as I was when I was in Miami, when I was clearly the best player in the league. I'm going to take some plays off defensively. I'm going to make sure that my body is ready to go in the playoffs. Right. Do I still want LeBron James on my team in the playoffs? Probably, but it's not a slight on LeBron James. This is me more saying that the rest of the league is really good. James Harden, Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kawhi Leonard. Those are the 4 players I put ahead of LeBron James. Those 4 players are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Those 4 players have all won MVPs at a different level. Kawhi obviously winning 2 finals MVPs and hasn't won league MVP. And he could very well win a league MVP this year with the LA Clippers if he decides to play enough games. So it's not like I put him behind, I don't know, Goran Dragic or something. I put him behind 4 great players in the league, MVP caliber players. Kawhi Leonard, a 2-time Finals MVP, and they do it at a high level and have been doing it at a high level. So LeBron James being 5th is not a bad thing.
I'm going to shoot you a tweet after the season, and we're going to revisit this and see what happens. You just arrived from covering the World Cup.
Yes.
You're here, obviously, for the Americup. What can you tell me about their experience there in China, which, I think was a nice one?
Yeah, well, I think most people were looking at the World Cup, if you're from an American perspective, saying that we sent our a D-League team and or D-level team. But the team that they sent there was really talented. Donovan Mitchell, I think he's going to be set for a really good season.
You got him on your list. I think it's 20 something or 30.
Yeah, he's in. I had him in the 20s, and I probably put him a little bit too low. He's gonna have to show it for an entire season. He's gonna have a really good team around him in Utah. I think they have a team that if it all falls right for them, they could end up in the finals.
I mean, Mike Conley now.
Mike Conley's there.
A guy who is such unbelievably underrated, man.
Yeah. Rudy Gobert, who's a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, we finally got to see him score for France at the World Cup.
Right.
He doesn't get that opportunity to show that he has that much in Utah because he doesn't need to. They also picked up Bojan Bogdanovic. That's a big pickup. Joe Ingles is still there, who had a nice World Cup as well. They have some pieces now where they can play any style. If they want to play fast, they can play fast. If they want to play big, they can play big. Right. And if they want to lock you down and defend, they can absolutely do that. But it's all going to fall on Donovan Mitchell's shoulders to be able to carry the scoring load on a night-to-night basis. And I think after the game against Turkey, when Kemba Walker took over for Team USA, after that, Donovan Mitchell was the best player on the floor. Jason Tatum goes down in that game, and he was the secondary scorer. Donovan Mitchell took over from there. And we saw that late in the game, against France when Team USA almost beat France.
Right.
It was Donovan Mitchell that took over in that third quarter and put Team USA in a position to be close enough to try and get that win against France. So, I think that's the one thing that stuck out to me at the World Cup is Donovan Mitchell. I think he's going to lead into the season having a great year. But the entire World Cup, Thomas Satoransky was impressive to me. What he did with that Czech Republic team, I think he's put himself in a situation where Chicago now has a legitimate point guard. They might sneak into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference after missing out on the playoffs for a very long time. But the experience at the World Cup, to see some of these players up close and personal that get put into different situations when they're playing for their national team, like a Rudy Gobert, like a Thomas Satoransky, you forget how good the NBA is because, Joe Ingles is not really known for his scoring with Utah, but he comes into
the World Cup,
World Cup and he's on fire. Patty Mills, not known for his scoring in San Antonio, and he almost led the World Cup in scoring. Bojan Bogdanovic, incredible. And now he's going to, ask for more minutes in Sacramento, and they should give it to him. They have three guards there with Bogdanovic and De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield that can really play now at a high level. So that's what stuck out to me the most about the World Cup, and that's why I love FIBA basketball, because when you go to the World Cup or you go to any of these events, no game is a blowout because every team always plays hard no matter what the score is.
Carlan, obviously you're in media. Is this what you always wanted to do?
Yeah.
Are you living the dream?
I'm absolutely living the dream, man. It's Manuel, let me tell you, I wanted to be in the NBA like most people,
Right.
And once I figured out that wasn't going to happen to me, the next best thing was to just work in sport. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to work in sport. And then, as I slowly figured out what I wanted to do, play-by-play was obviously on the top of the list. I went to school for radio broadcasting. It's a tough market to crack. Toronto's the media capital of the world in Canada. I was lucky enough to start a podcast with one of my good friends who I still talk to every day now, and Andy McNamara, who's working at TSN 1050 locally in Toronto, does an amazing job hosting different shows. But him and I started a podcast covering Canadian Football League. And that's how we really got started. That no one was doing it at the time. There was only one other podcast at the time, and then maybe one journalist outside of the national broadcasters that was covering it on a day-to-day basis. His name's Andrew Buchholz. He was writing for Yahoo. And me and Max started it, and we couldn't get top-end guests, so we started off just asking offensive linemen to come on the show. Andrew Buchholz was one of the guys who, when we first started, came on the show. But then we quickly realized that because there wasn't a lot of CFL podcasts, we can go as high as we want in terms of the guests because it was easier to get some of these guys. They were more available. We had the commissioner on the podcast in our first year, and this is us just doing independent. We didn't have any backing or anything like that. And finally, I think it was towards the end of our first year, we were lucky enough to work with CBC Sports, which is the national free-to-air broadcaster in Canada. And we did the playoffs with them. They loved it. They wanted us back for the following year, so we started there and ended up on TSN, which TSN is the broadcaster for the CFL, exclusive broadcaster, and we were able to do live radio hits, during the playoffs. And from there, we kind of both got our foot in the door and were able to fill in. Mac's still there now, doing, like I said, a great job. I moved on and moved to Australia at the time, and I was hired by DAZN while I was out there to work with NBA Australia, and the rest is history. And I did my first play-by-play gig with FIBA for the Eurobasket 2017 with my guy Mark Clark. He's he's a veteran, broadcaster. He knows the game really well. Coached at a high level for Great Britain. And I couldn't work with a better guy than Mark Clark to have my first go around working with FIBA basketball. And I was lucky enough again to work with him in China. I think sometimes when you work with a partner, it's hard to get the chemistry right. But I think from minute one, game one, me and Mark just figured it out, and it just clicked. And I really enjoy working with him. And now I'm working with Natalia Melendez.
Right. I want to go into that. Working with one of the most respected and known personalities in sport here in the island, Natalia Melendez, a former player. how has it been? I mean, she knows a lot, but obviously she's working on a different language, so that might be a barrier, but I think she's doing a great job.
I think the one thing that people who know Natalia quickly find out is that she's just a good, genuine person. Forget about how good she is as a broadcaster and knowing the game. She's just a good person, and that's the first thing that I noticed meeting her and watching her kind of interact. I've worked with many people in TV, and sometimes you meet people and they have such a big ego. Natalia, that's not the case with Natalia at all. She welcomed me with open arms. Watching her interact with the fans at the games, people are coming up and taking pictures with her, and she's always ready to take them, no matter what. It doesn't matter. I've never seen her in a bad mood. For an entire week, people are always grabbing at her, saying hi to her, and she, acts like it is. She's just as happy to meet them as they are to meet her. And when I saw that, that's when I knew she was a great person. And that, it's not fake with her. It's truly genuine. And then on top of it, she knows her stuff, man. Like she played the game. She knows the ins and outs. And she doesn't just rest on her memory. She's going out in there and doing notes. She's taking the notes. She shows up to the games with papers on papers on papers. While we're in the game, she's writing things down. When we're in the breaks and we're talking about what's happening at halftime, she's still working. She doesn't want to take a day off. She's as hard working as it gets, and there's a reason why she's the most respected journalist, or one of the most respected journalists here in this country. And to be honest with you, that this is just the beginning for her. This is even though she's a big star in Puerto Rico, I really and truly see her becoming a big star, not just in South America, but in the entire Americas region, because this is just the first tournament she's done in English. She can do it in Spanish as well. So more and more people are going to know who Natalia Melendez is after this. I just hope she remembers me when
she blows up
and becomes a big star.
That's great. Carlan, obviously calling 4 games per day here through the first round and now in the semis. That's crazy. That's a lot of games to do. And most of the games, unfortunately, are wide open, are blowouts. I want to go into your preparation before the games.
Sure. And
how do you, the load management, if you can call it like that, your throat, is going to suffer from talking hours. How do you manage those two?
People always tell me, preserve your voice and make sure that your throat is okay. When you're calling a basketball game, and this is the way I feel it, I just call it off of the feel. For me, I'm excited to do it, and I hope that the people watching and listening are just as excited, no matter the score, whether or not the score is a 50-point game, which we've had some of those, unfortunately, or a 2-point double overtime game, which is just as exciting. So I just hope that I'm bringing across the joy that I'm living out my dream. I don't care that the score. I have no rooting interest in who wins or loses. For me, it's just a dream to be able to call basketball games. So it's easy. It doesn't feel like work at all. Even though it's 4 games a day, I have maybe half an hour between each game. It sounds like on paper it's a long shift. We've done 20 games in 5 days. 5 days, right. We're gonna do 6 more in the next 2. But it doesn't feel like work to me. It just feels like I'm having fun. And to prep for it, it's basketball. I consume basketball no matter what. If you weren't here, I'd probably be on the internet watching something about basketball. So, studying for prep, it feels like it's just like an open book test, because I have the internet. So if I need to look anything up, I can do it right there and on the air. And then secondly, going into it, I kind of want to know anyway. I'd be reading that stuff anyway if I was watching an Americup game. So, and then the last thing, Natalia's been incredible when it comes to preparation. If I don't have a piece of information, she definitely has it, and some, and the ability to tell the story behind it. So working with her has been amazing. I've learned a lot just listening to her tell stories, both on and off the air. I've learned a lot by watching her introduce me to other people that have played at the Americup level, both on the men and women's side. So I think just having her there as the expert, because I'm just the guy that's talking, she is really the expert. She's the star. Has been incredible.
You're also related to a podcast called NBA Sound Systems. I was actually listening to it before I got here to the episode of Mark Stein and the award he got for his writing. Stein is a pretty particular guy, and he has been writing some things about Team USA and how the FIBA World Cup is not as big as the FIFA, in soccer. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's
first, he's trying to justify USA's performance, saying that maybe this is not as important tournament as we think it is.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that the NBA Sound System podcast is one of the up and coming podcasts I think you can listen to. If you're listening to this show right now and you haven't subscribed to the NBA Sound System podcast, go ahead and do it. Lawrence Scott is the guy that runs it. He works for the Golden State Warriors. And also does this NBA Sound System, and he's who got us involved over at DAZN and NBA Global. But I heard that Mark Stein interview as well, and Mark is, he's one of the best, has been covering the league for a very long time, rightfully deserving the award at the. I think, if you're going to give out Hall of Fame awards and you're going to put writers into the Hall of Fame, Mark Stein will be up there in the conversation to get there one day. But he's right. The FIBA World Cup isn't the Soccer World Cup. Is it trying to be? I think so in a basketball sense, but it's not there yet. People have to realize this is the first time that FIBA has gone through this new qualification process and also this new format of the World Cup. Before the World Cup, we would just go out and play it. It was the World Championships. It wasn't even called the World Cup. You'd just go out and play it, and it would be every 2 years between the Olympics. Now you have it where it's open. There's 32 teams, which is, I think, a good sign for basketball. Even though you're going to have some blowouts. I know the Philippines showed up and really wasn't at the level. But now they know the level they have to get to. They can't show up at the World Cup and just roll 12 guys out there. They have to prepare and come with it because they don't want to be embarrassed, going through it. So I think for countries like that, it's important. I also think attaching the qualifiers to qualify through the Olympics to the World Cup is important as well, because now if you're Team USA, you have to send a great squad to make it to the Olympics. You can't just send a half squad. So it's going to take time for the FIBA World Cup to get to the level of the Soccer World Cup. I don't think it's there yet, because I think in people's minds the ultimate as a basketball player or fan is still going to be the Olympics.
How do you feel about NBA players declining invitations for the national team and pulling out at the last time? I mean, a couple guys like De'Aaron Fox just pull out of the team like 2 days before they make the trip to Australia. Do you think that's fair?
That doesn't bother me as much as it bothers other people. I think everybody has their own personal reasons why they decide to not play. And sometimes it has nothing to do with basketball. We love basketball. I love basketball just as much as anybody else. But basketball isn't life. Some people would like to spend more time with their families. Some people are rehabbing injuries, taking care of their bodies. There's so many different reasons why some of these guys didn't show up to the FIBA Basketball World Cup. Now, me being a FIBA commentator, would I have loved to see the best of the best of the best show up? Absolutely, because selfishly, as a fan, I want to see the best compete. But it's not like we got guys off the street showing up. We still got 12 NBA players on Team USA. In Canada's sense, we still got a handful of NBA players playing, and then guys that are playing high level in Europe show up and participate. And they had Nick Nurse, who just won the NBA championship, coach Team Canada. So for me, it wasn't as much as a downfall as it would have been for other people. I think all those guys are going to show up at the Olympics this summer. I also think the timing of the World Cup was a little tough for most to participate. And again, it's new. Most people weren't expecting this. They don't know how to expect it. They'll now know that 4 years from now, when we have the next World Cup in the Philippines, when it's coming, they'll be well aware of it. They're going to have time to get the excuses out of the way now.
Right.
They'll show up and they'll play, and Team USA will probably put forth one of their better teams, because for a lack of a better term, they felt like maybe they were embarrassed by not finishing at least in the top three and getting on the podium. Right. And for the rest of the world, they now know that, hey, we have a chance and we can go out and beat Team USA, and they're not the juggernaut that they once were. So I think it opens the door for a lot of teams, and it should be fun the next time around.
You know why I feel bad about it? Because of Greg Popovich. I mean, he gets the job, and then players start dropping out, and they aren't able to medal. So I mean, his legacy, we all know his legacy is not questioned.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think it was great for him as a coach to be the guy that after so many championships, it's now 7 in the world.
I'll say this in terms of Coach Popovich, I think he secretly liked the fact that he had a team that wasn't star-studded, because then he was now able to coach.
Right.
At the NBA level, obviously he's done an incredible job of coaching, but he got to a point now where he has a system in place in San Antonio where he can pull guys in and out. And when he had Manu, Tim, and Tony, those guys were able to kind of just go out there and do what they do. This is a little bit different, where you have such a short window. You got to get 12 guys on the same page at the same time to go up against elite talent in a short period of time and make adjustments game to game. And there's so many different styles. There's a European style of basketball. There's an Asian style of basketball. There's a North American style of basketball. There's an African style of basketball. And you see those different styles back to back to back, and you have maybe 1 day rest to think about it and really break it down. I think as a coach, that should be exciting to you, and I think he really embraced it. And in the game, it's 1 game elimination style. It's not 7 games, playoff series where you have all day long or all week long to figure out a team. You could go down 0-2 in a playoff series and still win 4-2 because you've made the right adjustments. In a game against France, they go down, and he has quarter to quarter to make the adjustments. I think that's fun as a coach to really be in those environments, and it's going to show up in the Olympics this summer.
I think knowing Greg, he probably took it as a challenge, and he was, behind the scenes just trying to coach and being the guy, like he's the guy in San Antonio. Carlan, switching lanes now to women's basketball again. Why do you think women are getting the respect that they deserve, as players and as athletes?
It's hard. That's a hard one for me to answer, because I could only speak on my behalf, and my behalf is, it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're an athlete, you're an athlete, and I have just the highest respect for athletes, period. Coming here to watch the Americup and seeing the talent level, I'm not going to say I'm surprised, but I'm pleased, because it's really good basketball. Team USA has sent a team here that a lot of those players could have decided not to play for their country because they just finished going through a WNBA season. One of them is still in college, playing at UConn, and they decided to be here, and they're treating it like a business trip. They're really here trying to win the Americup, and it would be the first time they've done that since the last 2, because they haven't participated. So that is awesome to see, and having them here to set the bar high again. I talked about it when you talk about the World Cup. Now if you're Brazil, where you have to go to get to being one of the best teams in the world. Same for Canada. Canada's been incredible at this Americup, and this isn't even their best team. They no disrespect to the ladies on the roster, but there's still other talent out there that isn't playing on this team right now, and that's to show you how deep Canada has become. At the women's level, and they've won the last 2 Americups, and we're seeing why. They have a good chance to make it 3 in a row, and they'll have to go through likely Team USA to do that. Puerto Rico has played really well, being at home. I think people here in Puerto Rico, that have showed up to the tournament have been impressed with the 12 girls that are representing the country. So I wouldn't say I can't speak for the people that turn a blind eye to what the female athletes are doing all across the world, no matter the sport, because it's not just basketball. We saw at the FIFA World Cup, it was high level soccer. We see it at the Olympics every year. Track, swimming, doesn't matter the sport. I think it's high level, athletics, and I have just the utmost respect for athletes, period. So, I can't relate to someone that doesn't look at it that way.
Right. Going now back to the NBA, what do you think are going to be some of the major or main storylines in the league? I believe the Lakers, is one of the teams to see what they can do now with Anthony Davis, who finally pulled the trade. LeBron coming back from a short season. The first short season he's had in 10 years, I believe, because he has been playing 100 games each year. He played 38 or something last year, so he well rested. How do you see that Lakers team working?
I like the Lakers a lot. I think the biggest blessing in disguise of the entire offseason was gifted to the Lakers when Kawhi Leonard didn't go to LA, or ended up with the Clippers and not the Lakers. Because had they got Kawhi Leonard, yes, they would have been a very good team, but the rest of the roster would have been, there would have been a huge drop off. But now they have a complete roster. I think a lot of veterans, they've built it the right way. They're still adding pieces, and they have now players that they can trade to accept other players on the roster to see how things shape up. They're a playoff roster, though. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to win the Western Conference in terms of seeding in after the regular season. I don't think they're going to be the best team record-wise in the Western Conference. But they have veterans on the team that are going to be ready to go come April 15th when the playoffs get going, and that's going to serve them well. The other thing is I think this is the best team that Anthony Davis has been on. Obviously, he's playing with LeBron James, the best player he's ever played with. Right. And vice versa. I think this is the best player LeBron James has ever played with.
I mean, you're saying Anthony Davis is better than Kyrie Irving,
yes,
than Dwayne Wade.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and Dwayne Wade is a future Hall of Famer. Chris Bosh was a really good player as well. Right. People forget what he was doing in Toronto before he went to Miami. It was a different style. Kevin Love as well. Kevin Love was 20-10 when he was in Minnesota. He was one of the better players there. But no one's as talented as Anthony Davis in terms of LeBron James' teammates. So I think that's going to energize LeBron James because he hasn't played with a guy that has the skill set that Anthony Davis presents, and vice versa. Anthony Davis hasn't played with a guy as talented as LeBron. I think that Anthony Davis is a sneaky dark horse candidate for league MVP because LeBron is going to do everything he can to roll out the red carpet to make sure Anthony Davis is comfortable in achieving the same level of production that he did, if not more, in New Orleans. So I like the Lakers a lot. I think those battles between them and the Clippers, they'll play 4 times a year, is going to be much-watched TV. I think we get it right there opening night. They're going to be going back, head-to-head. But I would love to see a 7-game series between the Clippers and the Lakers in the second round of the playoffs. I think that would be really, really fun. And to say this, if I had to pick right now, I actually would take the Lakers in a 7-game series over the Clippers. Not many people are saying that, but I'm telling you right now in your podcast, I would have the Lakers favorite right now today, the way the roster is constructed, to beat the Clippers.
And I would have to agree with that one, Carla. How much better can Giannis get? I mean, how impressive is for him to be MVP and then show up to the World Cup, do a whole lot of friendly games or practice games? Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It's impressive. You got to give him credit for wanting to play for his country. Anytime someone does and puts things, because he could have easily taken it off and decided I really just want to relax. But he loves the game. He also loves his country, and I think he's also realizing the spot that he's in. There's a lot of kids that look up to him, home locally, that would love to see him play. So that's one thing. In terms of how much better he can get, I mean, the sky's the limit with the guy. I had him number 2. I have him behind Kawhi Leonard, and the only reason why I have him behind Kawhi Leonard, I think Kawhi showed you in the playoffs that when it comes to them one-on-one defensively, he finds ways to stop Giannis because there's things that Giannis just hasn't been able to do, and he will be able to do in terms of shooting the ball at a high level from 3. In the playoffs, though, against the Raptors, he shot the ball pretty well. And he can develop those mechanics. And now it's just about confidence. He's never really no one's really asked him to take that shot. That's why you see him dunking on dudes in the regular season. I don't think he should force it in the regular season. If they're gonna. If he's going to post you up and be able to slam on you, just continue to do that.
Right. So, but if he does develop that jump shot, everyone always says that. I think it's cliche at this point. Look out, the rest of the league is in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he can become a respectable 3-point shooter. He doesn't have to be J.J. Redick. He can just be LeBron James. LeBron wasn't a sniper from 3-point range when he came into the league, but now he can hit the 3. So I think it will help Giannis. If he was able to consistently hit the 3-point shot. But the other thing I think that will help Giannis is when he learns, and he learned a little bit last year, when he learns to slow down, because there's times when he's just in 6th gear because no one could stop him.
But there's also times when you need to take a step back and say, all right, I know I can score on this guy. I know I can score on this team. I know I can get 40. But let me get Eric Bledsoe involved. Let me find ways to get Brook Lopez involved. And right now, I think he's in a situation where he only gets those other guys involved if he's doubled and triple teamed. But if he can be more of a playmaker for those guys, then I think the sky's the limit.
Is it going to work out in Houston with James Harden and Russell Westbrook? I mean, they back together. Their time in Oklahoma was, okay.
Yeah.
They get rid of a guy like Chris Paul. How do you see that working out?
I think it works out for them in the regular season. Like I said, I don't think the Lakers would win the Western Conference in terms of best record. I think the Rockets have a good chance of finishing the number 1 seed in the Western Conference if both Harden and Westbrook are healthy. I think it's going to be hard night to night to game plan for both of those guys. I think Westbrook is in a situation, at least for the regular season, playing under Mike D'Antoni, where for the first time he's with a coach that's going to just tell him, be you.
Do whatever you want, basically.
You. Well, actually, I won't say that for the first time, because I think the coaches he's had, Scott Brooks and Billy Donovan, allowed Westbrook to be Westbrook, maybe a little bit too much. But now he's with a guy in Harden where he respects, and not to say that he didn't respect Paul George or Kevin Durant, but a guy in Harden where he respects, and a guy in Harden where Harden can also get his in the same way Westbrook can. Paul George had an incredible season last year. Really, really good season. His best season in his career. Ended up third in MVP voting. I think Harden, though, is still just a better player at this time. And Westbrook is now not the best player on his team anymore. And I think he's at a point in his career where he realizes that James Harden is the man in Houston. Anytime you get traded, I don't care when it happens, I think it humbles you, because you now understand that whether or not he helped find his way to Houston, which is probably what happened, but I think he's realized that he missed some opportunities in Oklahoma City. You don't play basketball forever, so now it's time to figure out a different way, because his way wasn't working out in Oklahoma City. So it's on Mike D'Antoni now. Mike D'Antoni has it all in front of him, and I think Mike D'Antoni is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for what he's done. Not only in Houston, but in Phoenix and wherever else. But he's going to put them in a good situation. They're going to have to play some sort of defense. I think they're a trade away from being in a conversation for ending up in the finals, and that trade could be getting someone like Andre Iguodala or someone at the deadline. But
he's still on the market, Iguodala?
I think he's still on the market, and I think the price is high because Memphis knows that he's available and he could be a key piece. He could really shift the balance for any team, not just in the West but in the East as well. But I really think Houston it might end up with the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, but they're the most likely out of the top 4 seeds. However you end up being both LA teams, Utah, you could throw in there. That Houston might be the first team that get upset in the playoffs just because of the way they play, and just because a lot's going to rely on Harden and Westbrook, and then defensively they just don't have the same punches they've had the last 2 years. So unless they get an Andre Iguodala, I think Houston ends up with the number 1 seed, but they're also going to be the first team to get bounced in the playoffs in the second round.
Going to the Eastern Conference, obviously I think Milwaukee is still probably the top team there. Arguably. What about Brooklyn? They got Kyrie. They got rid of this guy, D'Angelo Russell, which I think had a monster season last year. And in New York, you're talking about a rebuilding process that is taking forever. At least for the past 10 years, they've been rebuilding. They got rid of Porzingis. They got this guy, RJ Barrett, which is projected to be a star. What can you say about those two teams?
I'll start with New York because there's not much to say. There is short there. But from a Canadian perspective, I've seen RJ Barrett really produce at every level. He had a historic high school season, played really well at Duke. I think people forget that Zion Williamson missed part of that season in Duke, and it was really on RJ Barrett to make sure that they stayed at a level where they can get a good seed going into the tournament. So he held it down while Zion Williamson was out after blowing out his shoe. So he showed that he can carry the load at a high-level program, both at the high school level and at Duke. And there's no higher level program to carry in the NBA with so much weight on your shoulder than in New York. I think he's going to be fine in that market. The only problem is they signed a lot of players that are going to take away some shine because they're individual players from RJ Barrett, so it's going to be hard for him the first couple of years to really see what he can offer an NBA team. So they're going to be bad. They're going to stink for a little while. But the other team in New York, in terms of Brooklyn, they, bringing in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and to a lesser extent DeAndre Jordan, you have 3 players there that know how to get it done at a high level in terms of in the playoffs. And that was the one thing that Brooklyn didn't have last year. They had a lot of youth, they had a lot of talent, but they didn't have guys that knew how to get it done at a high level in the playoffs. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, obviously, they've won championships. Kevin Durant's 4 Finals MVP. He's not going to be there this season, but when he gets there, you now have a team that is going from a team that's probably going to finish 6th or 7th in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to shoot up to maybe finishing 1st or 2nd in the Eastern Conference next year when Kevin Durant comes. And who knows what happens this offseason. You could add another piece to that and really build off of that. But they have a good young core. Joe Harris is good. Karis LeVert, really good player. Wow. Spencer Dinwiddie, the list goes on. Jared Allen is a great defender. So they have the pieces to be really good even without Kevin Durant. But you add Kevin Durant to that team now, boy, look out. And then I like Milwaukee. I think losing Malcolm Brogdon is going to hurt them in some way, shape, or form because I think Malcolm Brogdon was the adult in that room. When things were going wrong, Malcolm Brogdon always found a way to either come up with a big defensive steal or big defensive possession and knock down a big 3 on the other end. Now that responsibility is going to land on the hands of Eric Bledsoe, and I don't know that Eric Bledsoe is equipped to do that sort of thing.
Right.
The Sixers are super talented. It's going to be on Brett Brown to figure out how he puts that together because they have a team that's good enough to win a championship.
Wow,
not just the East. They have a good team. Al Horford, really good player. Adding him to Joel Embiid, who's a player in my opinion who's going to be in the conversation for MVP of the league.
Right.
Ben Simmons, we could talk about his lack of jump shooting. That doesn't matter because
right.
I think he does so many other things that people overlook his talent across the board just to talk about his jump shot. Tobias Harris now doesn't have to battle with Jimmy Butler for shots anymore. He now has a defined role on the wing, and Josh Richardson could really shoot the ball. They're going to be tough. They're going to have a 5-man unit that is very tough. The bench we can question that whether the case may be, but they have a lot of shooting on that bench. When you talk about Mayer Shayok, we haven't really seen Zaire Smith. We'll see him this year. So they have a good young team to go around the Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris core. It's going to be on Brett Brown to figure it out. I think the 2 best teams in the East, clearly, Milwaukee and Philadelphia. Then you have Boston. And Toronto, who are probably 3 and 4. Indiana, not many people are talking about. I like the Pacers. I liked them last year. Victor Oladipo gets hurt. It was tough to see him go down that way. But they were able to maintain and stay, in the top 5 of the Eastern Conference. I think you have to give credit for that where credit's due because now they're going to get Victor Oladipo back at some point this season. They have Malcolm Brogdon, who's a solid point guard and can get the job done. So I think if the Pacers are able to maintain above 500 before Oladipo comes back, and Oladipo comes back and is playing as well as he did before he left, the Pacers might be in the 3rd or 4th seed, and no one wants to see them come playoff time.
Right. Do you think the Golden State Warriors are still the favorite in the West?
Not the favorite, but they're in the conversation.
Right.
I want to see how quickly Klay Thompson could come back.
Right.
If Klay Thompson could come back quickly in terms of being there ready to go for the playoffs, no one wants to play them. D'Angelo Russell and Steph Curry will have a full season together to figure out how to play together in the backcourt.
Do you see that working out? I mean, because, D'Angelo likes to shoot too.
Yeah.
Steph Curry would do anything to win. I believe he can be a passer. He doesn't have to take every shot, but they need his offense now with Klay out. Yeah. So how do you think they're going to manage that?
Well, I think this is the hardest coaching job that Steve Kerr's had to do. Second hardest coaching job that Steve Kerr's had to do. The first hardest coaching job Steve Kerr had to do was ensure that Kevin Durant was able to get all the shots that he was expecting to get when he joined the team, and he did that. When Kevin Durant came on to the Golden State Warriors roster, they already had their 73-win team. They were ready to go. They just lost in Game 7 of the finals, so we knew that they could win another championship even without Kevin Durant. He adds Kevin Durant to the team, and they didn't miss a beat. it was just seamless. So, now with Kevin Durant gone, that's all shots that opened up. Klay Thompson is not going to be there, available for the start of the season, most likely. Who knows what happens? He heals pretty quickly,
right?
But that leaves D'Angelo Russell to be in a situation where he knows that he's going to get his looks. But also, I think D'Angelo Russell is a pretty unselfish player. He can easily lead this team in assists, and that will free up Steph Curry to now be a spot-up shooter.
Which is scary.
That's very scary. So, I think I'm worried less about what Curry and D'Angelo Russell are going to do in the backcourt. I'm more excited to see Draymond Green get back to being what he was before Kevin Durant showed up, because he just signed the contract, so we're not going to have that drama floating over our heads anymore. He's getting into good shape. In the finals, he was in great shape. I saw him, in Toronto, and obviously in person, and he looked slim. He looked like he was ready to go. And now he has a full 82-game season, and with a chip on his shoulder. I think Draymond Green plays best when the chip's on his shoulder. He probably thought he deserved winning, a Defensive Player of the Year or anything like that. He wants to add those sort of accolades now to him. I think that this is going to be the best we've seen Draymond Green in a long time. And how Draymond Green goes is normally how the entire Golden State Warriors goes. He's the heart and soul of that team.
I agree. To wrap up the show on Carlan, I'm going to put you in the spot.
All right.
So I'm going to ask for some, early candidates. So for some of the awards, I'm going to start with MVP. Who you got?
MVP, early right now, I have Anthony Davis, providing that he plays enough games. I think Anthony Davis is in a situation where he can definitely win MVP. I know most people are looking at Giannis, but I would go Anthony Davis 1, and then I'd actually go Joel Embiid 2.
Okay, what about Rookie of the Year?
Rookie of the Year, my heart wants to say RJ Barrett just because I'm biased to RJ, as a Canadian. I don't think he'll put up the numbers, and I don't think the Knicks will be good enough to be in the conversation. John Morant, I'll go with. And everyone's going to pick Zion.
Right.
But the reason why I'm not going to pick Zion is because I think the hype is too high for Zion to live up to it right now. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad player. I just don't think that he's going to be the next LeBron James like everyone is expecting, because that's a high bar for a kid that hasn't played an NBA game, and he deserves the hype. He played well in high school and did his thing in college. He was the #1 overall pick. I just think everyone around him, the media, so to speak, is setting him up for failure, because he's just not going to reach that level of production in his first year. So I'll go with John Morant.
Right. Defensive Player of the Year, anyone other than Rudy Gobert, or maybe Jimmy Butler can be that guy. Either Kawhi can be that guy.
Kawhi can be that guy. I think Jimmy Butler can be that guy. Rudy Gobert is always going to be in conversation. I'll go Joel Embiid, and for the simple fact that the Sixers are going to be a really good defensive team when they get it together. And I think Joel Embiid wants to win this award, so he's going to go out and really defend. He won't do it for 82 games, but he'll do it in the spotlight games, meaning the games against the Lakers, the games against the Clippers, the games when they're on national TV. And sometimes that's enough for the voters, because the voters aren't going to watch all 82 games for the Sixers. They'll see the numbers, but when he shows up in those big-time games, they'll remember those moments and vote for him down the line.
Who do you think has the most chances of being the most improved?
Well, it's not going to be Pascal Siakam, because he's going to have to raise the bar again pretty high. Right.
And winning a championship doesn't really help him.
No,
right?
Not at all. Most improved player is an interesting one, because you could go so many ways. De'Aaron Fox was in the conversation last year. Buddy Hield is always in that conversation. I'm going to go out and say, someone that I would like to see have a good year this year in Boston is Jason Tatum. After having his first year with the Celtics and the playoff run that he was on, to get them on the cusp of making the finals, and then last year having the down year, I would like to see him bounce back a little bit. He got hurt, unfortunately, with Team USA, but before he got hurt, I was able to do the game and a half, or the 2 games you could call it, because he got hurt late in the game against Turkey. He was playing really good basketball. He found his range. He was stroking a little bit. And I think he's going to be in a better situation in Boston this time around, with Kemba Walker being as unselfish as he is, to kind of find a good groove. with the Celtics.
Who's the coach of the year?
Coach of the year, Nate McMillan for me, because I think the Pacers are a sleeper team in the Eastern Conference, and as long as Victor Oladipo comes back soon enough and healthy enough and ready to go, I don't think most people are going to see the Pacers, finishing the top 3 or predicting places to finish the top 3. And he's had them, top 4, top 5 team in the Eastern Conference the last couple of years. He has the best team right now on paper. Miles Turner looked really good in China. People weren't talking enough about him. He's shooting the 3 really well. And then I can't get over the addition of Malcolm Brogdon. I really like that addition for the Pacers. So I think he could only help Victor Oladipo. And Nate McMillan gets a guy who's a coach on the floor in Malcolm Brogdon. So I like the Pacers.
I don't know if Jamal Crawford has an offer, or is he already signed?
He's still out there.
Still out there. So if he signs, he's probably going to be one of the main candidates for six man of the year. Do you have anyone on your radar for that award?
Well, Lou Williams to me is
wow.
He's always there. And it also really depends on the different lineup combinations. But I think that Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to put himself in the conversation this year for Sacramento. I don't know if Luke Walton's going to go to a 3-guard lineup to start. I doubt it. But if he does have Bogdan Bogdanovic come off as a 6-man, I think he should be in the conversation, not only now, but for the rest of his career, as long as De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield are starting in front of him.
All right, Carlan, it's been a pleasure for me having this conversation. I think we covered, all the basics about yourself and the NBA, and I look forward to working with you in some other times, and really look forward to being on the play-by-play and listening to you call the games.
I appreciate you, man. This is a thrill for me, and thank you for thinking of me to come on this podcast. It's greatly appreciated.
All right, man. See you later.
Yes, thank you.
Gracias por escuchar Frecuencia EMA. Recuerda suscribirte a nuestro podcast para más episodios como este. También visita nuestro blog en facebook.com Easy Endurance para más artículos originales, videos y noticias.